I decided recently it was time that I changed the fork oil on my CB250NB. I don't know the history of the bike and I thought it was a good idea to do it. I've been going through making little adjustments here and there, and I can ride it on the road. It's got an MOT, but I don't know the history of any service, so that's what I've been doing. The Haynes manual actually states that the NB has a slightly different fitting for the top of the forks. And that's what I found out today. I've done one side, and before I show you the full job of doing the left hand side of the fork, I'm just going to show you what I found. The top nut on the top stanchion there is a 27mm socket. Now I couldn't get a socket in there because of the handlebars are in the way, which is fair enough, so I used a large open ender. On most of the models, that there, as you undo it, the spring pushes up on it and you have to push it down to stop the fork tension launching that into space. But with the NB model, underneath there is a small collar which needs undoing separately, and to do that you need an Allen key, and I didn't have one of the right size. I actually made a socket to fit it, so I'm just going to show you what I actually did. I actually undid the bolt, that one there, and I lifted it out, which is quite hard to do when I'm holding the camera with one hand and nothing with the other one. And if you can see in there, there's like a collar with a hexagonal head in it. Now, because I didn't have the right size socket, I had to make, or the right size tool to do it, I had to make one. And I did that by doing this. I'm just going to show you. I found a 13mm bolt, quite a long one. I don't know if that's focusing on that, alright, probably not. But it's a 13mm bolt, and it's probably be about 3.5 inches, 100, no, not 100mm, about 75mm long. And I locked a couple of nuts onto the other end on the left hand side. Now what happened then is this end can go down into the socket, and I can use a spanner on these nuts here to actually undo the collar inside. Before I did that though, I actually, you notice I've got a piece of wood that's about 16 inches 40 centimeters long, and what I do, because I don't want the fork tension pushing up underneath the bike, I prop the bike up by putting that under the front engine mount, lifting the front of the bike up and just kicking that back so as it lifts the front wheel off the floor, so there's no actual tension on the floor itself and on the fork springs. So hopefully that'll give you a bit of an idea. I'm now going to make a start on the job itself. I'm just going to explain to you what you're going to need to do it. The manual states that you need, in the N models, 140cc of ATF, automatic transmission fluid. From past experience, I've found that actually is a little bit too soft on the front end, and I've always used 2050. So I just bought some straightforward mineral oil, 2050 from Wilco today. It's only $4.50 for a litre, and I'm only going to use a bit of it. As I said, the earlier bikes use 140 millilitres or 140cc. This particular one, the later models, use 190cc. So I've got the oil. I've got an old milk bottle thing that I can just drain the oil into when I pump it out of the forks. Catches most of it. Measuring jug and a little funnel. The large socket, if you've actually got the handlebars off, you can use a 27mm socket. A large open ender, large adjustable, which is what I used on the nut because I couldn't get my socket in. A smaller adjustable, which I can use with this, and a 10mm spanner to undo the actual drain plugs on the bottom of the forks. I do believe some of the later models may not have the drain plugs on the bottom of the forks. That would have, you'd have to have a look at your bike and see. And some rags and some newspaper. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to start from scratch, and I'm going to start from the beginning of the actual job itself. So the job itself, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prop the front of the bike up, take the weight of it off the front wheel, and just underneath here, not under the starter motor itself, just under the front bit of frame, I'm just going to put that piece of wood in, 40 centimetres long, 16 inches roughly. And I'm just going to put my foot, it's a bit awkward because the camera's in the way, and as I lift the bike, I'm just going to push that back, and it holds the front wheel off the ground. That gives me a bit of clearance on the front. So that's what I want while I take the top nut out. So the first part of the job I'm going to do, I'm going to release this 27mm nut. As I can't get a socket on it, as I said, I'm just going to use a large open ender or a ring adjustable spanner. Check yours is 27mm before you go out and buy the proper tool, because it might be different if yours is not an NB model. I'm going to need to do two hands with this because I don't want the thing to slip and hit the actual tank. So I'm just going to put the camera somewhere else so as you can just see what I'm doing from there. So there's a spanner. I'm just being careful that I don't pull on any of the wires which goes to the switches, and that applies to the throttle cables on the other side. So I just get the spanner on. It should be fairly tight. I'm going to hold the bars and I'm just going to put it towards me like that. And that just bashed the tank a little bit, but I think it just caught the end of it with my knuckle. No damage there. It needs painting anyway, so it's not so bad on this one. It's part of the project. So I'm just going to put that back on and undo it. That's not too bad actually, so I'm just going to undo that fully till it undoes. It's a bit of an awkward one to get into. The reason I'm doing this end first before I drain the oil, I learnt this a long time ago. Before you take any oil out of anything, make sure you can access where you put it back in. I did it many years ago on an old car. I drained the oil out and I went to fill it up, and the filler cap broke and I couldn't get it off. So in the end I had to take the rocker cover off and refill the engine with that, and then have to get another rocker cover with a cover in it. So just a little tip, right? So this is the first plug that comes out, the first big spanner, big nut. If you have a different model, you'll probably find that that is actually forced up by the spring. Having the bike propped up at the start should, at the beginning underneath, should help stop that forcing up, but you might need to keep a bit of pressure on it while you lift it off. Now the next job is the bit with my special tool. Again, if I just move the camera, you might be able to just see down where the collar is. If I just show you here, so I'm sorry about this moving around. I'm sorry it's a bit dark in here, but it keeps raining outside and blowing a gale, so I don't really want to be outside doing this. You can just see down there, there's like a hexagon shape, and that's what I'm going to put the head of the nut into. I might just be able to show you that. So that just drops down, but the head of the bolt actually goes down and slots into that hexagon. And now I'm going to put the spanner on this nut and I'm going to undo it from there. Again, I'll put the camera back where it was just now so as you can see what I'm doing. Right, so I've got the bolt in, I push the head down into the socket and I just put my finger on top of it just to hold it so as it's square in, and then the smaller spanner on the bottom nut, there we go, just start to turn it and it starts to undo. I don't doubt that this is probably a standard 13mm Allen key, but I went down to Halfords before I started doing this just to see whether they had one, because I wasn't sure what size it was. I certainly didn't have one, and they didn't. They only had them up to 12mm, so I thought I'll see if I can improvise, which is what I did with this bolt. So now I know that's loose, before I actually fully take it out, I'm now actually going to drain the oil itself. So I've just removed the prop from under the engine because I now want it down on the forks because I need to compress them to actually get the oil out. Before I do that, I'm just going to put some rag up round here, just so that any of the oil doesn't run down over the brake disc or around the speedo cable, etc. It's just to protect it a little bit. I think that'll do actually. Now I will say to you, I'm going to put this little old bottle down here to catch it, but when I start pressing on the forks, that is going to squirt and it's going to miss quite a lot. So that's why I've got the newspaper down. That's my next job. I don't need to take it off the stand, but I just need the 10mm spanner just to undo the drain plug. Shouldn't be tight. I'll just undo that, put it to one side. It's got a little copper washer on here. There we go. The oil has already started draining. It looks actually quite dirty, which I'm glad I've done this. So I'm just going to put the front brake on. Just bounce up and down on the spring a little bit. There we go. Told you it'd miss it, but it doesn't matter, it's going on the newspaper. So if I just move that there a bit, and it's catching quite a lot of it. It's actually looking very watery to me. There we go. I'll just keep moving it up and down a bit. Just give it a chance for it to drain down before I pump it again. Get rid of all the residue. As I say, it's a bit of a messy job, but if you put plenty of paper down, right, I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to use the same washer on here if I need to change it. Obviously I'll need to change it, but I'm just going to put that, just make sure it's clean. It definitely looked a bit grubby, that oil there. There was a little bit more of it than on the other side. I'm just going to tighten that back up. I'm just going to nip that back up. I'm not going to heave on it very tightly. I'm going to pull it up reasonably tightly. Just make sure I just clean all the rest under here. I had to put a new Speedo cable on here, by the way, as well, because my Speedo cable had broken here, and that came, the bike actually came with it like that. I realised the job was going to be a bit of a project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to prop it back up again now, the bike. So I'm just going to continue to remove the collar now, which holds the bottom, the fork in, the fork springs. Again, it's a bit of a long-winded job this, it's quite a long way for it to come out. This adjustable spanner's not my favourite either. Maybe I should try my 13mm open ender. Oh, that's a bit better. See, I've been working on these bikes for donkey's years, only in my own time. I'm not a mechanic, but you still live and learn what can be easier than other times. Much, much easier. I think it's beginning to release again a bit now. Still a bit of a way to go. I can see the end of the thread. Oh, there we go. Turning quite nicely now. Right, so that's now released. I'm just going to lift that out, the bolt. I'm going to put my finger in there and I'm just going to lift out the collar. Right, okay. I'm going to check you can see that. That's the collar. So what my actual bolt does, the head goes in there and it acts like the spanner, and then the locked nuts together on the bolt actually allow you to turn it. So I'm just going to lift that out and put it on the ground, keeping it the same way up. And then underneath it there is another little flat collar. And I just need a thin screwdriver just to prop that up. Or even maybe my little magnet. Yep, there we go. And that's the other little collar I've just taken out. It's sort of got a dimple in it. The dimple goes down. Well, the bit that sticks out goes down, and the dimple is actually facing upwards. So this now allows me to actually put my oil in. So I'm going to measure out 190cc into my measure, and I'm going to show you what I have to do here to put it in. So here I am with my measuring jug and funnel. Let's make sure the end of it is down in the forks. Now, don't be tempted to pour it too quick, because the funnel delivers it quite slowly, and the actual forks slow the oil down entering into it. So make sure you keep an eye on it, that the oil keeps flowing, so you don't overfill it, otherwise it'll all come out the top. There we go, so that's the last little bit going down in. Just give it a moment to drain in so as it doesn't drip everywhere. Still just coming out the bottom of the funnel. Okay. Give it a bit of a wipe. So in goes the flat piece, the collar. Remember the dimple, the dent goes up and the bit that sticks out goes down. That drops in on the top of the fork. And then the little collar goes back in. You drop it in. Back to my special tool again. Might just got to be careful to make sure you start the thread evenly. If I said you've got one of the other models, that's not going in square there, so that's not right. If you've got one of the other models, you might be pressing down on this to try and get the fork spring compressed at the same time. A little bit awkward this, because the choker's in the way. It just makes my bolt go in a little bit unevenly. It's not quite square as it should be. And that's it, that's started now. So because I've got the bike propped up, keep bashing my tank. Good job it needs a respray, because the bike is actually a project, as I said. When I got it, very rattly engine, so I changed the oil and filter, got a new air filter for it because it didn't have one in it, put some new plugs in, checked the cam chain. Now I adjusted the cam chain and it felt like it was alright, but it still rattled. So I decided I would do the tuppet. So I took the cam cover off, and in the manual, the Haynes manual, it does state that if the automatic cam chain adjuster doesn't work, while you got the cam cover off, undo the adjuster nut, just press down on the top of the cam chain tensioner and then tighten it back up. And that's what I did, and it actually took up a little bit of slack that the automatic system didn't. Now it's been alright, I've not done many miles on it since I did it, but it's certainly a lot quieter, and time will tell. As I said, it's a project bike, it's not exactly, I'm not going to be doing thousands of miles on it. If something goes wrong, I'll just fix it. And I might, even in the winter, if I really feel like it, strip the whole thing down and rebuild it. But that's not the whole idea of having the bike in the first place, to be honest with you. I think I can feel it starting to tighten down now. I'm not going to heave on it. It's tight now, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at it while I tighten it up, just make sure it nips up. And I shall keep this tool for future use. I have a friend who's got a CB250RS who actually needs his oil seals changing. So whether his forks are the same as this or not, I don't know, but at least I've learned something a little bit more today. There we go, that's nice and tight. All I've got to do now is put the top cap nut back in, the big chromium plated one. And as I said, there's no tension on this one because I've got the collar. A large open ender, or a large adjustable. I keep calling it open ender and it's not. I suppose it is technically, but right, just careful. I'm not gonna... Okay, there we go, it's nipping up now, so I'm just going to put that on that way, make sure it's nice and tight on the nut. Just give it a good push. Yeah, that's nice and tight. Just try it that way as well. Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. So I've just got to pull the back of the bike back up and kick the piece of wood out. Stand. Feel a little bit tougher. Like so I should ride it a bit and see if it's a bit too much. Then I will go back to the ATF, but 2050 before has worked quite well for me. So leave it with me and I'll let you know how I get on. Thanks for watching. Bye.